Hey, welcome to today's episode. Today we're going to talk about the dark side of passive income. Yes, there is a dark side. And we're going to talk about why there is really no such thing as real passive income. Now, look, when I read the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I was mesmerized by it. It changed my complete outlook, my professional and financial outlook. And I was like, man, I need to change what I'm doing, forget working for the man or saving a bunch of money. It's all about having investments or ventures that generate cash flow. And that's what I set out to do in 2005. That's why I got into the pizza restaurants. I started getting into real estate, flipping houses, apartment buildings, this, that, and the other thing. And the idea appealed to me that once the passive income from those investments equal or exceed your living expenses, you're at that point financially independent. I mean, you can do whatever you want. You can stop, you can go volunteer, spend more time, travel, or you can start another business and keep doing it again. Whatever you think is fun. You don't have to work anymore because you don't want to. But let me give you some pointers about the dark side of passive income, because there's a dark side. And I think the myth really is that there is passive income. I think there's leveraged income, but passive income is very rare unless you're getting interest from CDs or bonds or something like that. So the lesson number one is don't become complacent. All right, you do a great deal and you kind of sit back and you count the money and you don't really notice what's going on. Let me give you an example. When I got into the pizza business in 2005, it was set up as a passive investment. I had a bunch of money from a software IPO that I plowed into these restaurants. Now, my thought was, and it was what I did. I hired a guy to run all these restaurants, and I plowed like 95% of my net worth into this thing, thinking that if I can afford 3 or 4 restaurants, that would then generate enough income to continue building restaurants. So I had visions and plans for 20 restaurants in 10 years, kind of what I was thinking. Now, that did not materialize. I wanted it to, but it didn't. And I didn't realize it, okay? So what, the short book, Who Moved My Cheese? The short story, these 2 mice, and they live in this little maze, and they're scurrying to find cheese, and they're not noticing that the cheese is slowly getting less and less and actually getting staler and staler. All of a sudden, they show up, and there's no more cheese left. They're like, what happened here? Where'd all the cheese go? And they just couldn't believe it. And they sat there in depression for days and days and days, growing hungrier. And none of them wanted to go look for cheese because it was unknown. They had to go into unknown parts of the maze. Until one of them finally, near death, goes out and goes through the maze. And, after days and days, finally finds new cheese. And he tells his friend about it. And the friend's like, nope, there's no cheese. I want my cheese. That's my cheese. And that's what I want. And he simply didn't move to find new cheese. And the story here was, I had my extent of running the business was meeting once a week with my operator, the guy that was running all the restaurants, and had lunch with him, and we talked about the numbers, and that was about it. Until one day we bounced a check of some sort, and I was like, we don't bounce checks. What is going on with that? And yeah, I was starting to look at the numbers, and sales were, flat, slightly down, and expenses were up. And it was a slow, steady grind ever since the recession, really. We never really recovered from the recession. And I just didn't pay attention to it. And then finally it got so bad, I had to let my operator go, and now I have his job, and it's not really something that I wanted to do in the beginning, And so the lesson here is don't become complacent. It's the same thing if you have an apartment building. Don't become the absentee landlord. You can be the out-of-area landlord, but don't become the absentee landlord that, when you never speak to the property manager, except for once a year. You got to put in a steady rhythm of how to interact with your property manager. You don't have to be there every month, okay? Sometimes you only be there once a year, if that. Once your property manager is in place and you have a reporting structure in place and a regular way of interacting with each other, you don't have to be there. I'm not saying that, but you need something where you're managing the manager and maybe even doing a little bit more. Maybe you're asking some of their employees or some of the tenants and you're checking up on them. You are staying engaged. And this is why I don't call it quite passive, but certainly leveraged. Certainly a leveraged activity. But lesson number one is don't become complacent with your investments. Always be pushing. Lesson number 2, don't invest in anything you're not afraid to run yourself one day. When I got into restaurants, I really didn't have any interest in being in the restaurant business. It was just a means to an end. And I never thought of the fact that I would be running restaurants. I was simply the investor, counting my money. Don't invest in anything you're not afraid to run yourself one day. I have another restaurant friend of mine told me a story where he invested some money in some coffee house. He was helping a friend or something, and that friend defaulted on the note, and all of a sudden he was running this coffee house. And he had to dispose of it, and it was a mess. And he was like, man, I never thought I would get into the coffee business, and I had no intention of being. Another friend of mine, I guess, invested or lent someone money in an online business. It was actually an online digital product with a list, and it was doing very well, but for some reason, this person defaulted on the note, and so he took the business over, and he didn't really know anything about digital marketing, but he learned. And it was a very profitable business. And in that particular case, he had no aversion to that kind of business. He's like, well, shoot, if I end up owning it, great. It's like if you're a hard money lender, you shouldn't be afraid to own property, right? So anyway, don't invest in anything you're not afraid to run yourself one day. What if your property manager quits or something and you have to run it for yourself for a month or so until you find it? Are you comfortable with that? So that's lesson number 2. Lesson number 3 is, there's really no such thing as true passive income, unless you're investing in savings bonds and CDs. And, don't treat anything as if it were truly passive. Treat it as leveraged. Stay involved in your investment, and don't become complacent. Regularly interact with the property manager, and don't just sit back and let complacency take you over. So those are some of the dark sides of passive income, and I'd love to hear your stories about your experience with passive income. All right, talk to you later, next episode. Hey there, and thanks so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I'm going to give you 3 things to do in sequence. Let me give you a quick tour of what those 3 things are, and then I'll show you how to do them. Number 1 is to download my free ebook called The 10-Minute Offer. It's all about making offers quickly, accurately, to give you confidence about analyzing deals and making offers. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to subscribe to my YouTube channel, because I put out new videos all the time, and I want you to make sure you get them. That's number 2. Number 3 is to watch the next video in line. All right, so I'm going to go give you a chance to do that right now. And when you click on one of these things, a new tab will open up, and for the ebook. Okay, so click on the ebook, a new tab will open up. The video will stop playing. You can go back to the video and click on step 2, which is subscribe to the channel. That'll open up a new tab as well. And then 3 is when you click on the last one to watch the next video in line. That'll open up in the current window. All right, I appreciate you guys, and I will catch you in the next video.